Good morning. Ooh, see, is it still morning? It is. Good morning. I'm Ward 4 Councilmember Janice Lewis George, Chair of the Committee on Facilities. It is 11:39 a.m. on Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, and I call to order this additional meeting of the Committee on Facilities to consider the report and recommendations of the Committee on Facilities on the fiscal year 2026 Local Budget Act of 2025 and the fiscal year 2026 Budget Support Act of 2025 for the agencies under our purview. This meeting is being held in room 500 of the John A. Wilson Building and is also being broadcast live on my website at janiceward4.com/live. I want to note for the record the presence of a quorum consisting of at-large Councilmember Christina Henderson, Ward 1 Councilmember Brianna Doe, and Ward 3 Councilmember Matthew Fruman. Throughout the fiscal year 2026 budget process, this committee remained ardently focused on pursuing several principles that have empowered this committee through both our oversight actions and our budget decisions to help this council meet this unprecedented high-stakes moment for the District of Columbia. The principles are protecting housing and benefits, promoting the health of individuals, communities, and the environment, fostering safety for all kinds, and ensuring our facilities are ones that everyone can thrive, and ensuring that people with disabilities in our city are loved, protected, and have all that they need to succeed and thrive in this city as well. For every question asked of agencies in writing or during hearings throughout the performance and budget oversight sessions, to the additional oversight roundtables held on urgent issues impacting district residents, our approach throughout has been rooted in these principles. From every fiscal decision recommended in this report for not just the agency under the pure purview of this committee, but every transfer to other committees, this committee words, actions, and choices remain steadfast in the pursuit of achieving these principles. The committee did so in order to give the district the best shot for reducing harm that difficult budgets can and often cause. I want to note that while agencies under this committee's purview hold impactful authorities and responsibilities in supporting the district's navigations of the challenges ahead, the committee is not naive to believe our agencies are the only ones or even the most important ones to do so. In that vein, the committee made substantive restorations and investments for our agencies amounting to $4.8 million in operating funds. We also transferred $3.1 million in operating to make similar aligned investments in agencies within other committees. In addition, this committee was also intentional about where within the district these investments across committees went. To that end, I'm proud to have brought a total of more than $12.5 million in capital investments towards 5, 7, and 8. With that, for the record, the public and the members of the committee, I'd like to walk through what we did, why we did it, and how many decisions, big and small, contributed to promoting the values of our guiding principles. I'll start with the changes made to the budget of the Department of General Services. The committee adds $1.836 million in one-time operating funds one-time operating funds for DGS summer 2025 school readiness efforts to restore funding beyond summer 2024 levels. The condition of schools is not just a facilities or education issue. It is an issue of public safety, public health, and economic development and justice, environmentalism, accessibility, and chronic absenteeism. With dedicated funding and empty schools, DGS annual summer readiness blitz represents the district's most critical window for addressing accumulated maintenance needs and infrastructure failures. As such, the level of success this year's school readiness efforts will have a tremendous impact on the success of students, educators, school communities, and the entirety of the district for the year to come. DGS, and particularly the agency's talented and dedicated trade workers who labor day and night year-round to maintain DC public schools, continue to lack sufficient resources to meet the facility standards that students, educators need, deserve, and are entitled to. The committee hopes these additional funds will help DGS conduct comprehensive HVAC system, preventative and retroactive maintenance, and the installation of functional contingency systems, address fundamental safety deficiencies that compromise school security and accessibility, and systemically reduce barriers to ADA compliance through active collaboration with the Office of Disability Rights and school staff who are familiar with the specific accommodation needs of students with disabilities. We transferred $633,356 recurring operating funds to the Committee on Public Works and Operations for DPW to assume responsibility for recycling collection on DPR properties, which is currently held by DGS. As the council and the district residents know, solid waste management challenges have persisted across DGS's portfolio for years, especially on DPR campuses. This recommendation emerges from an extensive oversight conducted by the committee over years, including dozens of facility tours, a multitude of inquiries and complaints from district residents, and persistent engagement with DGS, DPR, and DPW. At nearly every visit to DPR campuses, the committee has observed overflowing trash and recycling cans, which create unsanitary conditions that undermine the recreational experience for district residents. Transferring recycling responsibility to DPW will align service delivery with the district's established waste management expertise and infrastructure. As the government's primary solid waste management agency, DPW possesses specialized knowledge, equipment, and operational systems specifically designed for efficient waste and recycling collection. Further, when residents encounter waste collection problems, they naturally think of DPW as a responsible agency, as it handles residential and commercial waste collection throughout the district. Consolidating both trash and recycling collection under DPW will eliminate public confusion about which agency to contact regarding. I want to thank Councilmember Nadeau and her talented staff for the Public Works Committee for working so closely on this transfer with us. Collaboration on issues like these really showed that solutions for many of the challenges in the district do not happen to neatly align with the council's committee jurisdictions. I hope to continue to work with you and and others that involve agencies in both our committees, Councilmember Nadeau, so that we can get this right for district residents. Next, we'll discuss the budget of the Department of Parks and Recreation. The committee adds $166,251 in recurring operating funds for 2 DPR Level 1 maintenance positions. DGS's largest client agencies, including DCPS and DPR, are tasked with Level 1 maintenance. Level 1 maintenance includes minor responsibilities that do not rise to the level of a work order, such as general, electric, plumbing, and painting repairs, as well as some custodial work. This recommendation allocation resulted directly from a committee facilities tour of a DPR Recreation Center campus, during which 2 Level 1 maintenance workers joined. When asked how big their team is, we were shocked to learn that it was only 5 people. 5 positions is certainly inefficient to properly maintain DPR's expansive portfolio that includes 80 recreation centers, 36 pools and aquatic centers, 20 dog parks, and 244 park sites. The committee recognizes this previously overlooked insufficient capacity may be a large contributor to the unreasonable length of time it takes for the small facilities issues to be resolved, which often leads to frustration among those who utilize DPR spaces and services. The committee also fully restored $85,000 to fund the DC Special Olympics grants for DPR. Special Olympics DC serves as the sole provider of sports, health, and inclusion programs that benefit more than 2,500 children and adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the district. Special Olympics DC programming is essential both due to the health and social benefits, as well as the fact that they are always provided at no cost to participants. This small but impactful investment in the Special Olympics addresses a critical service gap for district residents with intellectual and developmental disabilities while advancing DPR's core mission of providing equitable recreation opportunities for all residents. The committee also adds $1.5 million in capital funds for a new greenhouse at DPR's Lederer Community Garden in Ward 7. Unfortunately, the greenhouse at Lederer was destroyed by a fire in 2024, resulting in the elimination of the primary seedling production facility serving 3 communal gardens, significantly reducing the district's capacity to support community-based food production. This investment will restore the ability of communities in Ward 7 to regain the lost health and environmental benefits of the greenhouse and enables the restoration of critical food production infrastructure while supporting expanded programming that could include community nutrition education, food preservation workshops, and healthy cooking demonstrations. I want to specifically thank the Ward 7 constituents who came out both in oversight and budget to advocate for this community garden and the impact it has on their community, as well as the Ward 7 council member, Wendell Felder, who also advocated alongside those constituents. We will now turn to the district's disability agencies, the Department on Disability Services, the Office of Disability Rights, and the Office of Deaf, Blind, Hard of Hearing. The committee adds $1,776,000 in recurring funds to relocate the Office for the Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing within the Office of Disability Rights. The mayor's fiscal year 26 proposed budget stripped MODA of its status as an agency, removing the autonomous structure and budget authority. The executive proposed DDS absorbed MODA as a program within DDS's budget. The committee does not object to MODA being moved outside of EOM. In fact, the committee has been concerned about the extended time the office spends participating in EOM events rather than overseeing ADA compliance. Ideally, the committee would like to see MODA as its own agency outside of EOM. However, the committee is not confident maintaining MODA's status as a distinct agency will result in a more mission-aligned placement, so we proceed with removing MODA's status as a distinct agency and placing the office elsewhere. We chose Office of Disability Rights over Department of Disability Service as the new home for MODA. DDS's mission is focused delivery of individualized, high-quality, safe services and supports, which is why DDS Establishment Act is located within Title VII, Human Health Care and Safety of the Code. MODA is a compliance agency with the legal authority and duty to report instances of district agencies' non-compliance with local and federal disability laws. As such, there is an inherent conflict of interest of placing MODA within the district agency that perhaps has the most frequent interaction with the affected population of this district residents. MODA's Establishment Act was placed in the same part of the DC Code as ODRs was years earlier, Title II, Government Administration, Chapter 14, Human Rights, Unit C, Disability Rights Protection. Both offices hold similar compliance-centered missions, with MODA's holding a particular focus on laws affecting deaf, deafblind, and the hard of hearing community. In addition, all district agencies hold near identical requirements to participate in the District of Columbia ADA compliance program, which is duly implemented by ODR and MODA. The committee adds $1 million for the residential disability service providers of the Department of Disability Services. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities must receive the quality, accessible, person-centered care they need, deserve, and are entitled to. However, their ability to do so depends on the district's commitment to ensuring our residential disability service providers network receives the resources necessary to provide such care. The mayor's fiscal year 2026 proposed budget reduced the administrative fee residential disability service providers to 50% of the fiscal year 24 levels, as the proposed budget did so in fiscal year 2025. The committee makes this partial restoration investment once again in order to offer providers, their dedicated staff, and people with intellectual and developmental disabilities supported by DDA with more stability and resources to maintain both quantity and quality of care. Now turning to the committee's transfers out to other committees. Again, these transfers were guided by our principles, starting with transfers aimed at protecting housing and benefits. To support families' economic hardship, we transferred $200,000 in one-time funds to the Committee on Human Services for temporary assistance for needy families, also known as TANF. This funding will help to provide more families access to the cash assistance they need in times of uncertainty. We transferred $350,000 in one-time funds to the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor for the Senior Connector Program under DACL. This investment will support continuing a program that helps older residents maintain independence by reducing transportation barriers. Recognizing the critical role of housing inspections in safeguarding tenants from landlord neglect, we transferred $231,000 funds to fund 2 DOB investigators. These funds will restore 2 of the positions from the rental housing inspection program and support the vital work of Department of Buildings proactive inspection program, improving the district's ability to identify and respond to unsafe housing conditions. For transfers related to promoting the health of individuals, communities, and environment, we transferred $247,709 in recurring funds to the Committee on Public Works and Operations for 2 DPW sweep inspectors. These additional FTEs will provide DPW with greater capacity to keep litter off district streets to the benefit and health of both residents and environment. We transfer $1.25 million in capital funds to the Committee of the Whole for DCPS to renovate Langdon Elementary School in Ward 5 to deal with some of the issues they continue to have, from the cafeteria to the kitchen. In doing so, the committee reinforces the expectation students have access to clean, functional, and healthy space to receive meals and gather throughout the school day. For transfer related to fostering safety of all kind, we transfer the full amount of $350 million in one-time operating funds to the Committee of Youth Affairs for CFSA to fully fund Safe Shores, the district's child advocacy center. Safe Shores serves as the district's only and statutorily designated child advocacy center, providing survivor-centered intervention, hope, and healing for children and families affected by abuse, trauma, and violence. The committee's decision to fully fund Safe Shores recognize effective child protection requires specialized facilities, highly trained staff, and comprehensive programming that cannot be adequately supported through the fragmented or insufficient funding streams. This investment helps the district maintain a world-class response to one of the most serious threats to community safety, the abuse and exploitation of children. The committee transferred $100,000 to the Committee on Judiciary and Public Safety for OVSJG's Access to Justice initiative. The mayor's $21 million cut to Access Justice puts in jeopardy a vital safety net for families in crisis who rely upon the program to access critically necessary legal help. While this transfer contributes to closing the gap, a considerable gap remains, and I hope that we can all work together to fully fund the Access to Justice initiative in the coming weeks. The committee transfers $1 million in capital funds to the Committee on Human Services for the District of Columbia Public Libraries. Libraries function as a vital community anchor in which residents of all ages can safely and productively spend their time, access natural gathering spaces for community meetings, educational resources, civic engagement, and delivery of social services. In doing so, libraries foster the type of collective efficacy that addresses crime through prevention of its root causes by strengthening neighborhood convention. The committee also transferred $2 million in capital funds to the Committee on Human Services for DCPL's General Improvement Fund. In order for individuals and community to gain the benefits libraries provided, libraries must not only exist, but be maintained to conditions that are safe, healthy, comfortable, and welcoming. This substantial investment underscores the committee's recognition that infrastructure quality is not merely aesthetic, but fundamentally connected to utilization of engagement with government spaces and services, including those of libraries. Coming to the subtitles referred to this committee, the committee, in partnership with the Committee on Transportation and Environment, recommends striking the mayor's proposed Net Zero Energy Ready Building Code Amendment Act of 2025 subtitle. This subtitle substantially undermines the district's climate goals and commitments at a time the district should be doing the opposite. While the district is ahead in many areas of net zero energy applications, I do not believe that this is a valid reason nor excuse to fall behind. Enacting the mayor's proposed 2023 subtitle would guarantee the district's failure to meet our 2032 commitment for environmentalism like areas of governance. Our government's actions should speak louder than our words. Acknowledging concerns regarding upfront capital costs, the committee maintains net zero requirements are necessary, legal required, and worthwhile investment in the future of the district's buildings, environment, and people. As district government budgets are required to balance, the committee maintains budgets that are also required to comply with existing law, regardless of whether those laws are local or federal, and whether local laws originate from a council or the executive. However, the executive's proposed budget once again does not provide sufficient funding for capital projects to comply with the Greener Government Buildings Act. Instead, once again, the executive sought to change the law instead of budgeting to comply with it. However, in wanting the district and specifically DGS to advance our climate goals, irrespective of the executive's lack of willingness to do so, the committee adds $2.2 million for the new community center at historic Crummell School in Ward 5, 2.6 for the Fort Davis Recreation Center modernization in Ward 7, and $5 million for the Congress Heights Recreation Center modernization in Ward 8. In addition, the investment in these projects was an intentional choice not only to advance net zero infrastructure, but to do so by ensuring climate forward infrastructure benefits residents, areas that are historically underinvested in environmental improvements and often experience disproportionate environmental burdens. The committee also recommends one new subtitle, Recreation Facilities Assessment Amendment Act of 2025. The subtitle requires DGS to conduct an annual survey on the condition of spray parks, artificial turf fields, playgrounds, and courts such as tennis, pickleball, basketball, or similar hard surface courts as determined by the department. The survey results shall be disaggregated by the facility, made publicly available, and transmitted to the council chairpersons with oversight over the department and DPR and the Office of City Administrator by March 1st each year. This requirement will provide the council and the public with timely and transparent assessments of the district's growing recreational facility portfolio. This will support more informed oversight, budgeting, and planning decisions. Thank you to Councilmember Henderson and her staff for working so hard on this subtitle, and I look forward to seeing how DGS will implement it. Finally, while I'm glad we could accomplish what we did, I want to emphasize the work of this committee and the council is not finished. We still have a great deal to accomplish before the next and final votes on this budget and for the rest of the year. Specifically, I look forward to working with Chairman and Councilmember Bonds on responsible and fiscally sound solution to the district archives project, which was suddenly abandoned after decades of research, planning, and even construction. I will also focus on working with the chairman to increase the deputy mayor for education's out-of-time school grant to the Boys and Girls Club, while the organization transitions to a non-DPR swing space during Jealous modernization. We want to continue to work to fight for access to justice, TANF, paid family leave, and ERAP. I look forward to working with the chairman and my colleagues to address many of the critical gaps still remaining in this budget that this and the other committees were unable to fill ourselves. Things like the child tax credit, making sure we have enough food for SNAP, things that are going to really support working families here in the district. The circumstances facing the district on both the local and federal levels are unprecedented. Many are new and many are not going away. The limitations imposed by these circumstances on this budget are dire but not insurmountable. The council must not fail to meet this historic and high-stakes moment that requires intentional, compassion, evidence-driven restoration and protection, the services, programs, and spaces the district needs, deserve, and are entitled to. I will now move and open the floor to discussion for the report and recommendations of the Committee on Facilities on the fiscal year 2026 Local Budget Act of 2025 and the fiscal year 2026 Budget Support Act for the agencies under its purview. Is there any discussion? Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the dedication you and your team have shown in crafting this budget report. This fiscal year posed significant challenges for our district, but I'm heartened to witness my colleagues' commitment to prioritizing essential services for our residents. With this budget, the committee has made investments in all 8 wards, serving every population from our youngest to our most senior. There are a few areas I'd like to highlight. First, schools and parks. Regarding DGS, I commend this committee for its diligent oversight of work order response times, particularly concerning school maintenance and readiness, and I'm hopeful the committee's $1.8 million investment in school readiness will facilitate initiatives aimed at improving work order backlogs and response times. When our kids don't have working water fountains or bathrooms or air conditioning or are learning in an environment with rats and roaches, they won't want to be in school. When safeties like non-working cameras, broken locks and doors, and broken railings and bleachers aren't addressed, it undermines both student morale and educator effectiveness. Schools should be clean, well-maintained, safe environments so our students can fully focus on learning and being kids. Ensuring the DGS is functioning as efficiently as possible is no easy feat. Thank you for accepting the transfer of $1.2 million for improvements for Amigos Park. This has been a long journey, and your early investments, Madam Chair, helped get the whole project launched. That said, earlier this month, we heard that the mayor has decided not to approve the purchase negotiated by DGS, but we are not giving up. Hearing the news last week that the visionary for Amigos Park, Arturo Griffiths, had died only strengthened our resolve. The FY26 budget is truly a collaboration between the Committee on Facilities and Public Works and Operations to address longstanding issues with one of DC's hottest topics, trash. With the Committee on Facilities 2 transfers to the Committee on Public Works and Operations, we will make strides toward a cleaner and healthier city. $247,000 in recurring funds for 2 DPW sweep inspectors to enhance neighborhood cleanliness and environmental health. These additional FTEs will provide DPW with greater capacity to keep litter off district streets to the benefit of health and of both residents, of the health of both residents and the environment. A transfer of $633,000 in recurring operation funds for DPW to assume responsibility for recycling collections on DPR properties. Pages 33 to 36 of the committee report are a deep dive into the confusion around trash collection in parks and the attempt to better understand the why of our current system. Together, we will create a more intuitive trash collection program that is consistent, clean, and intuitive for the public. In part, through these transfers, our committee was able to fund the Clean Collections Act that you introduced and we passed last year. This new law will enforce minimum solid waste capacity standards for multi-purpose properties, as well as give DPW the authority to install public litter cans on certain residential blocks, which, believe it or not, they currently cannot do. I also want to commend you, Madam Chair, for your deep commitment to our most vulnerable residents, restoring funds for Safe Shores, the district's statutorily designated Children's Advocacy Center, supporting our residents with disabilities through $1 million in funding to DDS for residential disability service providers, restoring crucial funding for OVSJG's Access to Justice initiative, and supporting families through a $200,000 transfer to the Committee on Human Services for TANF. Thank you, Councilmember Lewis George, for your thoughtful policy decisions, and my sincere gratitude to your staff for their tireless effort. I look forward to seeing the priorities in this budget realized in the coming year. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councilmember Henderson.
Thank you, Councilmember Lewis George. It's
My first budget on Committee on Facilities. I'm super excited. But thank you for your leadership and your collaboration. I especially want to express my appreciation to you and your team. Sebastian has been working incredibly hard, especially on a subtitle that we worked on together on recreational facility assessments. The subtitle required the Department of General Services to conduct an annual survey on the condition of spray parks, artificial turfs, playgrounds, and courts such as tennis, pickleball, basketball, and other hard surface areas as defined by the department. I think that with this, it will allow for us to be able to have a more informed oversight and budget planning and capital investment decisions, as opposed to what feels very ad hoc right now. It wasn't easy, but we did it. And so I appreciate you guys continuing to work with us to get it over the finish line. And I want to thank DGS, his director, the director, as well as his chief of staff for working with us on this. Before I highlight several key items in the budget report, that I'm enthusiastic and supportive, I do want to briefly address the capital project for the complex at RFK Stadium. I understand the hesitation around committing $89 million to a project that currently lacks a clearly defined vision from the Department of Parks and Rec. That said, I feel like we have to kind of proceed with caution to make sure that we are not having some unintended consequences to some other projects that are kind of being developed in that area. So I look forward to working with the full council on this and hopefully for us to get some better answers from the executive about the true vision for this future sportsplex, which I think all of us would agree is necessary. Now to the good parts. Delighted to see that we have fully funded Safe Shores. As you mentioned, and this is a critical program that provides survivor-centered intervention, hope, and healing for children and families affected by abuse, trauma, and violence. I'm also glad that the Mayor's Office of Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing has found a home as in the Office of Disability Rights rather than Department of Disability Services as originally proposed. Although their names are similar, they have very different missions, and I do believe that ODR's mission aligns more closely on civil rights and accessibility with what we were trying to do when we created the Office of Deaf, Blind, Hard of Hearing a few years ago. I also want to thank you for your intentional investments made to our parks and community centers and gardens. I was especially pleased to see the addition of the $1.5 million in capital funding for Ladera Community Garden. Last year, this garden had a accidental fire, which was a major setback, particularly with the loss of the greenhouse, but this critical investment will hopefully restore this. It's not just a win for the garden. This is about food security for our Ward 7 communities, and so I want to thank you for that. And I also want to thank Joshua Singer and the many volunteers who stepped up in that moment to take care of the seedlings and produce and ensuring that the garden can continue to serve the community. I do believe our community gardens are worth fighting for, and this budget certainly recognizes that. I'm also grateful that we were able, for the $1.2 million transfer to the Committee on Executive Administration and Labor for DACL to install a new elevator at the Hattie Holmes Senior Wellness Center in Ward 4. I feel like sometimes our senior wellness centers get the last straw in some of their maintenance needs. And so it's good to see that this is being prioritized. And on that point around maintenance, the 2 new level 1 maintenance positions at DPR, I think are super vital and important and can help us with some of the preventative day-to-day work that don't rise to the formal level of a work order, but are still needed. Right now, there are only 5 DPR staff who are performed with doing this across 80 rec centers, 36 pools and aquatic centers, 20 dog parks, 244 park sites, 7 urban farms, and 38 community gardens. Definitely at a lot of properties for 5 people to try to keep up with the maintenance that's necessary. And so this is a meaningful step to making sure that our public spaces are continuously properly cared for. Also want to express support for the investment into DC Special Olympics. These programs offer vital social and health benefits for residents with disabilities, and more importantly, they give our athletes a platform to compete and grow and shine. And this kind of inclusion speaks volumes in terms of the values of our city. Finally, I want to commend you and your team and also in collaboration with the Public Works Committee on this persistent oversight issue around these recycling issues at the DPR sites, it never made sense to me how we divided up who was responsible for what in the park system. And it allowed, frankly, for a lot of finger pointing and not its when we were having overflowing cans and otherwise. And so having this all in one agency, which it probably should have been from the very beginning, but here we are. Our residents deserve to enjoy their neighborhood parks without having to navigate overflowing trash and recycling bins. And so this is a quality of life issue, especially when we're facing, high degree temperatures and strong storms. We need to make sure that our public spaces are not full with debris. So I want to thank you again, Chair Lewis George, as well as your staff for your thoughtful stewardship of this budget and for prioritizing the needs of residents in every ward. Thank you.
You, Councilmember.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Lewis George. Really a great job with this budget, and building on the really phenomenal work that you've done with your oversight over DGS over the past 2 years. It's made a real difference, and I very much look forward to it, seeing that difference express itself even more in the coming school year. And this is a really challenging budget. There's not a lot of dollars to work with, so everything that we do has to be pretty surgical and targeted, and you have really done that here. One of the big things, and others have touched on this, is maintenance. We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in schools and parks and libraries, but we have to maintain them properly, and we have lagged in that effort. And you've done a number of things here that I think help in what I guess Councilmember Lewis George Henderson talked about as quality of life issues. The rationalization of trash and recycling pickup is big. The added dollars for school readiness for that kind of maintenance work, really important. Thank you for that. The addition of the DPR maintenance folks who can lift some of the load and get some of this work done. Really grateful for that. The money for lights and for nets, really, really important. We have these facilities that could be used for many more hours than they are used because the lights don't work. And with a modest investment, you literally light them up and put them to the benefit of our residents. The small parks improvements, the money for playground equipment. I mean, how often are we getting calls about this piece of playground equipment is broken or that one? And you've taken an important step to do that. You've gone not just inside of your committee, but at DCPL, you added money to the general improvements budget. Really, really important. Very, very grateful for that. And the BSA on the conditions assessment, I hadn't put 2 and 2 together, but I guess Councilmember Henderson probably worked on this for the schools when it was created for the schools, and it's been such an important tool there. And when I saw it here, I thought, oh, of course we should do that. So really very, very important that you've done that. I have to say I visited Letter Gardens this spring, and it's phenomenal. I mean, it's an incredible place, and the people gather there. They go to the farmers market. They work in the garden. It's a really, really important place. And when I stood there, I thought, we need 10 more of these. Not only do we need to fix this one, but we need 10 more of these. So very, very grateful to you for your investment there. Of course, grateful for your investment on TANF, which made it possible for us to do some important things. Also really grateful for the investment in the connector card. I mean, I think wards 3 and 4 go back and forth. One year we have the most seniors, another year you have the most seniors. And the issue that we hear about the most from our seniors, as you know, is transportation. I mean, there's lots of issues, but we hear an awful lot about transportation. So really, really grateful to you for that investment. And the Department of Buildings investigators, we have heard there's a gap of investigators as opposed to inspectors. And so again, a very targeted investment that can make a real difference. There are a couple of things that are out there that I suspect we share as priorities that as we move forward, I'll be focusing on. The Boys and Girls Clubs who are well represented here. We want to make sure that we can keep them whole. One of the things that we experience, and I've seen it at other parks, is these erosion projects. And there had been money in past years for erosion projects. There wasn't money this year. It's really probably something I should have been much more aggressive in talking with you about in the last 2 weeks as opposed to here. So it's not a criticism of you, it's a criticism of me, but that's a thing that I'd like to see if we could restore. The archives, you didn't do anything on the archives. I don't think it falls to you to do anything on the archives. We need a better solution on the archives than the one that has been proposed. You took some of the money away from Carter Barron, but around Carter Barron, the big thing is what's happening at Carter Barron, and again, not a criticism in any way of you, but I mean, we all need to understand what are people thinking about at Carter Barron, because that's a big asset. It could be exciting, might not be exciting. We need to figure it out. I look forward to working with you on those things. But the bottom line is really grateful to you for the work that you've done and the way in which you've leveraged modest amount of dollars to make a big impact on key issues. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will, at this time, I move the report and recommendations of the Committee on Facilities and Family Services on the fiscal year 2025 budget for agency under its purview with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the motion passes. Before I adjourn, I'd like to share appreciation for people without whom both this report and the work of this committee overall would not be possible. First, I want to thank you to my directors and their agency teams for working with the committee so closely during this budget and throughout the year. Delano Hunter, the director of DGS, Thene Freeman, director of DPR, Andrew Reese, the director of DDS, Matthew McCullough, the director of ODR, and Carrie Cook, the director of MODA. If they didn't know before, they know now after joining my committee that oversight is not just performance season. It's not just budget season. It is always including recess. A huge thank you to the entire budget office team, especially the committee's talented, dedicated, and patient budget analyst, Kyra Smith, as well as Ann Phelps, Jim Budoff, and the rest of the team. Every single budget allocation and transfer achieved in this report would not have been possible without Kyra's skill, advice, and expertise. So we're extremely grateful for her. Thank you to David Goa, the Office of the General Counsel, for diligently reviewing and advising on the legislation that is moved by this committee and my office as well. I also want to thank Jamie Latinen, our fiscal analyst at the Office of Revenue Analysts, for working with this committee and the agencies under its purview to ensure all our work done by this committee is appropriately funded. I also want to thank my committee and legislative staff for their incredibly hard work on this report and the entire budget so far. To come, Sebastian Wyman, our committee director, who just does a phenomenal job and truly cares about district residents and shows up every day to do this work in such an amazing way. To Nico Pacholkin, our legislative director, Jim Kaufman, senior policy advisor, and Emily Neer, our legislative assistant. Thank you for being an exceptional policy team. And I want to thank the rest of my staff for keeping things running, especially during this budget season. Candace Nelson, Ben Rosenfeld, Barbara Rogers, LaPria Holton, Krisha Smith, and Darrell Whitmere. We're truly a team over here, and I appreciate all of the work that you all do. Thank you to my committee members and colleagues for your tireless advocacy for your constituents, for our city, and for your efforts within your own committees to uplift district residents in such a difficult budget year. With the business before the committee having concluded, the time is now 12:18 p.m. p.m. And this additional meeting of the Committee on Facilities is adjourned.